Good day. I'm Charlotte Moyo with my fellow colleagues here, Lakson Chingoja and Wadzanai Chibanda. We are looking at the topic which says hashtag roads must fall in eurocentric political theory. When we look at this notion which says hashtag roads must fall, we say it is the brainchild of the South African students at the University of Cape Town. What do I mean about the brainchild? It is the discovery, it is the idea, it is the innovation, the inspiration, plan, the product of the South African students at the University of Cape Town. UCT played an important role struggle against apartheid, yet not enough has been done post-1994 to bring about freedom and change. When we look back during apartheid, UCT was enrolling medical students, and during that time they were enrolling only whites and few black people. We can say 2% of the black people were being enrolled at UCT University. So here now, they did this movement so that they can earn their freedom and change, freedom of education. So they wanted change into their classrooms, housing, and laboratories. Over the past decades, critical opportunities for change at UCT were instead missed. Even when we look during the apartheid, they even tried protesting, but there was discrimination among students. There was no freedom of black people. So, including during the period of 1997 to 2008, because UCT regulation appears as the leading African institution of westernized system rankings, such as the Times, Higher Education, and Quacurelli Simon's World University Rankings, and within South Africa. On March 9, 2015, Umani Makleli, a black student at the University of Cape Town UCT in South Africa, threw containers of human feces against the bronze statue of Cecil John Ross located on the university's campus. Umani Makleli saw that the university didn't meet up with their needs, with their cry as students. So he decided to make a move for the university to hear their cry as students. And he saw that the education of UCT, it was eurocentric, and he decided to revolt against the law. Maklele's defilement of the Ross statue was an important catalyst in the formation of hashtag Ross must fall, a radical student movement centered on decolonizing UCT by confronting questions of institutional racism, increasing access to education, and reforming the Eurocentric university curriculum. For example, at the UCT University, they are using English as their universal language at the campus, whereas they've got their native languages, but they are not allowed to use them. This is a stage of roads, and these are students that are then I'll leave this time to.
That's what bigger. Jesus Christ, big.
And then I'll leave this time to Lakson. Thank you.
It's going around 4 minutes.
Imagine.
It is what it is.
Eh?
I want to stay in the 45 minutes to be 45 minutes. How many minutes was that?
Okay. Hashtag roads must fall and eurocentric political theory. This topic is mainly talking about how we need to free the African mind. We as Africans, we are mainly focusing on how, let's say, the African system, educational system, or everything that is done politically is mainly linked to the European-centric politicals. So when this Rhodes Must Fall movement began, it basically what my colleague tried to say, it began in UCT, where students were trying to make sure that the UCT curriculum was decolonized, which meant that they had to offer systems that were stable for Africans, that could help Africans. So some people may argue that when we are trying to decolonize education, or when we are trying to say Rhodes Must Fall, we are trying to say we need an Afrocentric political theory, but we don't mean that. We just need some changes in the system. So I'm going to take you through how we can change those things. So let's go. So that's what I'm. The Rhodes Must Fall movement is symbolic in the sense that the African type of education is still colonialistic. So this means that when I'm trying to say it's still colonialistic, that means we are still dependent on the European type of education. That means we don't value our own education as a system. Adding to that, philosophers argue that the European education is anti-African, it is exploitative. Let's take for example the native language. During lessons time, the main language we speak at schools will be English, not our native languages. So that means it's an European system that was placed onto us, and even in the courtrooms, we are all Africans. Let's take for example, we are in the courtroom of Zimbabweans. Mainly those people will be like Shona speaking people or the Ndebele speaking people. This means that when we have those people, right, they can even speak in their own native languages, but because of this European-centric, we are now speaking in the English language. I can quote from a song written by Osage Banga, who talked about how we are basically Zimbabweans, but since we are Zimbabweans, we should speak our own languages, right? He was trying to say in the courtrooms, everybody is black, everybody is like Zimbabwean. Let's take Zimbabweans for example, everybody is Zimbabweans. So this means that in the court, we can even speak in Shona. We don't have to speak in English because everybody will be black, right? Adding on, the European education gives birth to supporting and reinforcement type of European politics, right? For example, we take on the functionalist perspective of psychology. From this psychology, we learn that family in school. Let's take for example, family is the primary socializing agent in the society. This means that a child is when they are going from they are taught how to speak and other stuff. Mainly we speak English because everybody wants something. When you are an English speaking person, they value that as intelligent student. But if you are not like that, then it's different. So when we are learning this type of education, we have learned all the exploits of the Europeans, what they did, how they conquered Africa, how they did right. They gave us different types of politics in Africa, and since Africans are being taught European type of education, this means that we will be in favor of what the Europeans are doing, but we don't favor our own selves. Adding to that, Desmond Tutu also argues that Africans have followed the European way of being individuals, which meant that mostly Africans were united people. We used to do things as a whole. Now we are doing what's called competition. We have been trained to mistrust people. We are not unlike others. We dislike, even hate ourselves. There was a study that was carried out in South Africa where they did this study. There were like 10 students. Then there were like 2 black people, then 3 Indians, then 4 Caucasians. When those 2 black people were asking them about which people they liked more, those black students were more in favor of dating, let's say, a white person. So that means everybody wants to have that Caucasian type of relationship. Everybody in the politics wants to be favored by the white people, right? Furthermore, Bembe explains that the method of teaching has become obsolete. This type of education, this is supported by Nyao 2012, who states that education in Africa emphasizes more on mimicry over creativity. So this one, Nyao is trying to explain that everything that we are doing in Africa is just a mirror of what has been done in Europe. Everything that is being done in Europe, we are doing the same thing. We don't have a sense of belonging. We don't have a sense of individuality of being Africans, because basically everything is being done. So adding to that, students, this means that mostly when we are learning in school in order to in the politics, much of the history will be European history, and then we are not taught about Africa and all that stuff. As we view those things is obsolete. Adding to that, educational systems is to be decolonized if they have turned higher education systems into a marketable product. It has turned educational systems into a marketable product. This means that the measurement system cannot only be abolished, but as Africans we need our own system. Nyao is trying to explain how as Africans we can try to change things, but not by making Afrocentric ideas, but by decolonizing everything. As we are trying to decolonize everything, we are not saying that our European system is bad, but we are trying to say we are trying to say there are some changes we can make to the European system of politics, like some changes that we can make to the European system, because there is type of voting and all that stuff. We know that those are nice, but they mostly work in favor of Europeans in the politics. Let's take for example, when votes came, we took African people's names and all that stuff, but when they won the Chikorega War, the black people, like let's take for example Zimbabwe in the personal Zimbabweans, when they won the Chikorega War, they took their land back, and there was this land reform act whereby Mugabe had to command his people, his own people, Zimbabweans, that they had to go back and take their own land. But this was rebuked by the Europeans. They said that it was not fair because some of the white people had bought the land legally. But this shows that the eurocentric political theory is still exploitative. It supports the whites, but it rebukes what if we do the same thing. They rebuke us, and then they fire us with these sanctions are meant to show that the Europeans have strength, but the Europeans and America Adding to that, from here, according to Ngugi, education is a means of knowledge about ourselves. After we have examined ourselves, we radiate outwards and discover people and the world around us. But in the European-centric political theory, this type of education and road must form. Basically, we are only looking at the viewpoint of Europeans. So students at the UCT and let's just say Africa, where they are trying to make sure that everything is centric on Africa. We decolonize everything. We remove those historical figures of those people who were wicked. From here we can see a picture of all roads leads to the colonization of the mind. So that's what the point I'm trying to make, that when we are saying the road must form movement, we are trying to say we need to decolonize the mind, because the mind is colonized already. Everything that an African does, we see it as inferior, other than when a European person does those things, they see it as superior. We copy everything. Add to that, Africa needs to be at the center of things. Yes, Africa needs to be at the center of things, because we have been given such a that means we are unable to give people the things, the means, and the productions. Let's take for example Zimbabwe. We have the minerals and the other and everything, but because of those sanctions, mostly we don't have the adding to that, Africa needs to be at the center of things, not existing as an appendix or a satellite of other countries and literature. Things must be seen from an African perspective. This point is adding on to what I said. Yes, Africa, we are dependent on Europeans, but we have, if we can try, we can make everything our own politics, our own education, everything, because we have the resources. As well, then they have the marketplaces and all that stuff. And when we are trying to say politics, adding on to that, all things are to be considered in their relevance to our situation, in their contribution towards our understanding and ourselves. In suggesting that we are not rejecting other streams, especially the Western streams, we are only clearly mapping out the direction and perspectives of culture and literature. So, at this point, we are trying to see, throughout the history, they try to explain that we, as eurocentric means, Eurocentrism means that everything is centered around Europe, right? So they see us as savages, the Africans. They see us as enemies. So all things are considered in their relevance to our own situation. That means they favor their own surroundings. They favor their own. They don't allow us to be able to do anything. According to Achille Bebe, a Eurocentric theory states that European type of knowledge is the correct way. Right? They try to say European type of knowledge is the correct way, but not our Afrocentric knowledge. We despise that, because everything should be, as a student or as a scholar, we argue this should be a starting point. We take, for example, the philosophers or the anthropological views. They say they used to study sociology, those social sciences is to study the society, but anthropology was used to study the native people. They say those barbarians like the Africans. If you want to have decolonizing knowledge is therefore not simply about westernization. Yes, when we are trying to say decolonizing education, decolonizing it's not simply about westernization, but even in their influence, they are from Europe, their influence is far away. We are still, the mind is now, the African mind is now influenced by saying these people are superior to us and all that stuff. When we say roads must fall, we mean that the patriarchy must fall, that the white supremacy must fall, that all systematic operations must fall.
Iwalakson. Lakson. No. Okay, so continuing from where my colleague stopped, when we say roads must fall, we mean that patriarchy must fall, that the white supreme must fall, and that the systemic operation based on any power of religion of difference must be destroyed at all cost. Ramin, a student in the movements, just said just before the status fell. During the Ross time as Prime Minister, Rhodes used his political power to expropriate land from black Africans through the Glenn Gray Act. This act introduced the system of individualism. Rather comical, this is proven nowadays by our government, whereby ministers, while tackling the wealth requirements for the voting under the French and the Brooklyn Act, this is now being used in our everyday lives of political and is used by Africans. Furthermore, when we say Ross must fall, we are talking about how the African mind has been colonized. For example, the magistrate court, the judge still wear the white wig of that was brought upon by this pre-colonialized perspective. As you can see from the images above, in the court, the judges still wear the white thing that showed that apartheid still existed back then. Adding to that, even the teachers in the African follow the dress code of the European, which formal for man, its suit and the ties, and for women is dress which does not show more. So this proves that Eurocentrism has made Africans to follow the white steps and have abandoned the African attire, which is amabeshu, that are mostly worn by African people. For example, the Zulu people, that they wear because it's the traditional clothes. The amabeshu clothes that were made from animal skin, that, for example, can be lion skin or sheep and cows and all that, or cattle, for example. Adding to that, English has become the universal language in Africa, and African language are now the second language. For example, during interviews, people are now expected to speak in English through the person is going to work in rural areas, which is typically Shona people who don't know English, but during the interview, one is supposed to speak in English. More so, even during the presentations in the class, one is supposed to speak in English. Even like when you do admissions for your schools, your home languages always have to be English, and your second language can be maybe Zulu or Xhosa, but the home language is always English, which shows that English has taken over from the main language that other people speak. Rhodes' legacy lives on through monuments, buildings, institutions that bear his name. Adding to that, the policies he introduced through the British Empire, and this cannot be changed, but sometimes can be done to be improved. Adding to that, in the court, we have the magistrate system, which benefits the Western world, only while in the world we have the juror, but the eyewitness are not in Africa. In courts, we adapt to situations of holding a Bible and swearing, which means whenever you are going to say, it's going to be the truth, but nothing but the truth, right? As you can see from the picture above, before you say anything in court, you're supposed to go into the Bible and hold it and say these words like you're going to say nothing but the truth and all that. That is done in courts and stuff. The government
that was there forced people to deculturalize and on the field without explaining the importance. Now 43 years later, the court rage are now no longer being used in the form as the technology was good, but how when we enforced on the black natives and made it to the laws. Through it was reduced erosion because the momentarily brought by the Rhodes government, they did not fully explain the narrative. So I think people need to be educated on the benefits of cons. When we have to remove the demand syndrome of European, like for example through the pre-colonial times, they mineral and set it back to their homes, and now we come back to the gym. The Zimbabwe government, for example, needs to allow innovations. Adding to that, the University of Students Daniel Chigoma invested a helicopter, but the government deemed to the citation unsafe. But if it was a white person who had invented something new, every person would have recognized that as a real thing. So this shows that although we say that democracy, we have moved from the apartheid times, but although we say that we have moved from the apartheid times, some way or the other, apartheid still exists, because when a black person invents something that is new, something that has never been done, and wants to program it, the people always refuse because they always think it's unsafe, or maybe you will face some challenges in the future. But if that same thing is produced by a white person, it's immediately allowed without any questions asked, because of the color, I don't know. To sum up, #Rose must fall. An electronic political theory has to do with change the current setup in the system that we introduced by the colonist, which Rhodes have brought his views from Britain and his system, mostly favored by the Europeans, and thus Africans are calling for decolonization of education and the mind. But the UCT lights a spark to the Rhodes must fall movement, which later on lead other universities to remove against the system.
Okay, what my fellow colleagues was a nice band, and Charlotte tried to say. So I'm summing up everything that we have gathered about Rhodes must fall in eurocentric political theory. Since they talked about how it began in the northern stuff, how Rhodes must fall movement mean, and what decolonizing education mean. I also talked about how we need to free the African mind so that we can do our own things. As you can see, Wanzanai talked about how we need to remove the statues. We can talk how we have adopted the act of politics. We take from the white people. She talked about how. Let's take, for example, in the court or the magistrate court, those people are still wearing wigs. The judges are still wearing wigs, the white wigs. That thing we adopted that from the Europeans. That's why Akile Mbembe was trying to say we need to adopt our own things, to see everything in our own point of view, in our own perspectives as Africans. Adding to that, sorry for that. Adding to that, we talk about how people wear clothes. Yes, the dress code. For example, we are now meant to wear suits and ties. Suits and ties is our main dress clothing. We took that from the Europeans. And now English, for example. English is now a basically universal language in Africa. Kids are now living leaving their own countries to go to America. They see that America or Europe is being successful in life. They feel that they need to go there to be successful. Adding to that, people say Rhodes' legacy is intact with Africa. Yes, we cannot deny that Rhodes' legacy is still intact in Africa. But we know that it lives on through buildings, monuments, and institutions, right? That bear his name. Let's take for example UCT, where there is a statue of him and all that stuff. Yeah. We know that this cannot be changed as it is history. We know it is history. Why we study history is that in order to do this, we need to improve ourselves. Like political analysts try to say that the court will have the judiciary, which benefits the Western world. The judiciary system itself, it benefits the we have the judiciary system. It takes me back to a lecture that I had with a lecture on psychology or how judiciary system works. I know that the judiciary system, we have like say 6 judiciary people. We have eyewitnesses and all that stuff in the judiciary. But it is recommended to have those people in the. We have the jury in the courtroom, right? We have the jury. That was what I was trying to explain. We have the jury in the courtroom. Since we have the jury, even in Zimbabwe or Africa, we have the jury, but we don't see the jury when we want them. We have mimicked what happens in Europe, America, but we don't use the jury here in Zimbabwe. We don't have the jury. This lecture will try to explain how there will be like 6 juries or 12 juries, and they are influenced through bias, in-group bias, right? In Zimbabwe, they say that in the laws they state that we have the jury that are the matters of the court, but we don't use that. That means take back the point of Akile Mbembe. Akile Mbembe is trying to say, yes, we know that the system works for Europeans, but how can it work for Africans since the jury system is not happening in Africa? Africa, right? Or it's not happening in Zimbabwe. So why not change the things that can be changed, right? Adding to that, let's take for example this one. You can clearly see a picture of a person holding a Bible, and they are playing and saying that they are going to do nothing but the truth and all that stuff. We know that people lie under oath. They do this under oath, right? And even under oath, we have adopted issues of oath in the Bible, right? This we got it from the Europeans. Furthermore, we talk about how the government, the pre-colonial government that was there, forced people, the Africans like Zimbabweans, to dig contour ridges in their fields without explaining the importance. Now, 43 years later down the line, the contour ridges are no longer being used in farms, as the technology was good, but the Europeans didn't show them how. Yes, so this is an example of how the Tricarian law even made it. This was through the Tricarian law. This example means that yes, people were forced to learn things. We are forced to do this. We have now a system of learning. We have a system of politics. We have a system of how we should do our own. We should register. Yes, in the pre-colonial era, we used to have chiefs. We used to have kings. And now we don't value those people's perceptions. We don't value their introduction. We don't value their minds. We say that we only want to We only want a leader that is a president who has been selected by the people. And adding to that, dictatorship, we get dictatorship from those people because they see themselves as white saviors. Why they are not white saviors, right? This point is trying to say that yes, they taught us what was valuable, but they didn't show us how to do those things. Take for example, in Europe, in Asia. In Asia, the kids there in Asia, they are taught how to function, how to operate computers, how to do. So everything is self-taught. They know what to do in life. They know what to depend on. They don't depend on the European system. Even the money, take the monetary system. The monetary system here, we don't, as Africans or like Zimbabwe especially, we don't value our own money. Our own monetary system, we see it as unfit. Our own monetary system, we see it as unfit. We go and borrow money from America, we use the dollars. If we take a look at how every African country that has used that American dollar, it takes time for it to rise up again. It takes time for it to rise up again. Adding to that, I read this article about the Herald. This is in Zimbabwe. This article is trying to, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was in 2015. This Herald is trying to talk about how we need to remove the dependency syndrome on Europe. Yes, these people came in the pre-colonial times and took minerals and all those wealth. They took those things and took them back to Europe. Then 43 years later down the line, they are bringing back our resources as donors. They're coming back as donors. They are bringing new innovations. Those things they see it as free, but we are now dependent. They have made a system that we depend on Europeans more than we depend on ourselves. Yes, they come as donors, but sometimes nothing is for free. That means those things are meant to help themselves also. They are meant to help themselves. Here I have an exclusive example of this helicopter, right? You can see, I don't know if the picture is clearly showing, but we have an example of a helicopter. This helicopter is a man-made helicopter. It was done by hand by a student at the University of Zimbabwe who was called Daniel Chingoma. He invented the helicopter, but the government deemed it unsafe, right? They deemed it unsafe. But if you take a look in Europe, if a person does this, if a white person does this in Europe, they see it as a great invention. Even the Zimbabweans themselves will post this on the newspapers, on the articles, on their gadgets. They say that it's new innovations by other people, new technologies. But when our own people do this, we see this as unfit. Because we have been colonized in the mind, we see those people as superior. Those people do the right thing. White people do the right things. Every politics they do is the right thing. They do sanctions. We talk about how those sanctions are not. They are benefiting the white people. The sanctions are not benefiting us. As Zimbabweans, you can see how people are suffering. People are moving from here, from Zimbabwe to South Africa, in order to look for jobs, in order to search for what to do. Because the sanctions are not helping. They are not helping. To sum up everything that has been stated so far, the roads must fall and eurocentric political theory. It's just a far cry of the problems that have been made because of colonialism, what roads did, and that has affected our minds. We see Europeans as superior. We see them as superior. We can take that. We see them through politics. I gave an example earlier of how when roads came and invaded Africans, he took their land and all that stuff. He made them, most of them, his slaves, right? But when Mugabe came in power, he took back the land through Land Reform Act. But this was deemed is banned by say Queen Victoria, who showed that Queen Elizabeth and all of the European government, they showed that it was unnecessary to do that. So that means the Eurocentric political theory, Eurocentric politics mainly favors what? It mainly favors the Europeans themselves. It doesn't favor the Africans. It is a military. We mimic everything that has been done in the Western world. We take, for example, our own clothing, the way we speak, the way we do things, even the setup of the parliament. We are setting it up just as what the politics does, the Europeans does. In the parliament, the whole parliament is based on black people in Zimbabwe. We speak the same language, but we constrict ourselves to these languages. We speak with an English accent. We speak in English just because we have been taught to do that. Even in the parliament, the setup, how we go about doing our things. And my conclusion for this presentation is that the Rhodes Master 4 movement, since we all know it came, it brought about the view and Britain and all that stuff. The theory. So this movement is all about how we need to change as a whole, as Africans. We need to be more of supportive. We don't have to be individuals like what the Europeans did. We take this European Union. People can travel from another European country to another without even passports. But here as Africans, we consider ourselves that you need to carry a passport, you need to do this. So those politics that we have adopted only favors the white people, only favors the Europeans. Thank you for this. We have our references. Here's our references: Kilembembe, Fenon. For anyone who wants to Google or others, these are our references. And here we go. And thank you.